covering several top legal stories right now. First, right off the bat, I want to get to something that we have been streaming on our secondary stream throughout, the duration of this trial, and it is the YSL case, right? Again, YSL. It's under it's debatable what that stands for, right?
Absolutely. And that's really the big question. We all joke about it. YSL certainly brings up some luxurious branding, but that may actually play into this with YSL and confusing the jury and whether this was a gang or whether this was a music label or some sort of combination of it. Joy, what we've got now is we are well into evidence presentation by the state in what's turning out to be Georgia's longest criminal trial of all time. We've spent virtually the entire year choosing a jury, and that jury is sat, and Judge Glanville is not going to waste its time. Judge Glanville has been leaning on all of the lawyers to be prepared, be ready, because he's trying this case. He's moving it along. We understand that there are literally hundreds of state witnesses that are being prepared to appear in front of this jury over the next several months before the defense even gets to put together its case. DA Fani Willis is using all of her assets to try to prosecute Young Thug and a series of gentlemen. I believe there are 5 or 6 that are left standing after a number of pleas in this unbelievably complex and interesting case that relates to whether this group of young men was actually an organized street gang and was violating Georgia's racketeering and corrupt organization laws, the RICO laws, also being used against, obviously, former President Trump, with the defense saying that, no, these are successful young people, some of them connected, some of them barely connected at all. And the defense is alleging that the state has constructed this idea that there was a gang and that gang was a criminal organization bent on violating a bunch of state and federal laws, most importantly involving drugs and some really serious violence. This case has been just grabbing the legal community because of the novel issues involved. First of all, this is a complex giant case because it's a RICO, and it started out much bigger than the small number of defendants still remaining. That size and complexity just brings an added level of interest because these RICO charges add a lot of tools for the DA. It's easier in some ways for the DA to process the individual evidence and combine them in telling a story that is a big weapon for them. Basically, the state's theory is good for one, good for all. And everybody's responsible for all of the actions ascribed to this criminal street gang or just association of young men all in business, selling records.
Yeah, and so I love how you qualified that. Of course, the prosecution saying it is a street gang, Young Slime Life gang, and of course the defense is saying it's an association. It's in fact a record label, Young Stoner Life record label. But it seems that at this point so far what the prosecution has been doing is just kind of laying groundwork. Last week we heard some testimony about a carjacking, and one of the defendants regarding that specific act actually already reached a plea deal with prosecutors, but it seems that the prosecution was trying to establish that this was sort of a gang activity, that it was done really at the orders of a gang leader, presumably Jeffrey Williams.
Absolutely. In order to carry the state's burden, the state really needs to show the jury how the organization existed. And it's got to show a lot of background and corroborative information presented through these different witnesses that there's no question in the jury's mind that these individuals were working together with a common plan, a common set of goals. They were working in conjunction with each other. And it's not like a alleged criminal street gang has an HR department and a book of rules that everyone signs and a bunch of tax work. No. The way the state's doing this is by currently presenting a lot of testimony from a lot of different crimes. We've been hearing from individual officers about individual crimes. Sometimes these crimes 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years old. Those officers are testifying that the individuals were involved so that then the state will argue in combination the totality of the circumstances carries the state's burden that beyond a reasonable doubt, Young Slime Life, YSL, was a criminal street gang with a criminal organization and goal.
And so, we talked about the carjacking that was detailed last week, and today we're hearing about a separate crime, and this is concerning, it sounds like defendant Shannon Stillwell is really the focus of this kind of testimony today. And we've been hearing from several members of the Atlanta Police Department, including an Atlanta police captain as well. But it's really interesting, Josh, like you said, it's really about laying foundation, laying out some groundwork, trying to establish that there was a gang that existed. But I want to call up for you, sorry, I'm just struggling with the technology a little bit, this image. Okay, so let's talk about this sweatshirt of Jeffrey Williams, aka Young Thug. He is wearing a sweatshirt. It looks like it is a wolf on that sweatshirt. And this is so interesting because if we remember opening statements by Adrian Love for the prosecution, she quoted Rudyard Kipling, this kind of this writing about a wolf pack, and I'm just going to read it verbatim now, and you can see this on AtlantaNewsFirst.com if you want to actually read the verbiage here. But now this is the law of the jungle, as old and as true as the sky, and the wolf that shall keep it may prosper, but the wolf that shall break it must die. As the creeper that girdles the tree trunk, the law runneth forward and back, for the strength of the pack is the wolf, and the strength of the wolf is the pack. After hearing that in opening statements, you've got Jeffrey Williams showing up to court today wearing this. What do you think, Josh?
Gotta love it. We talk all the time about when you're in trial, everything matters. Every single little thing. They are looking at the tiniest of details. There's a famous case right now out west where it was just the manner in which the person muttered an insult under their breath that the court paid attention to prove that they weren't actually incompetent because they could hold it together to make that complaint under their breath. This wearing of this shirt is absolutely intentional. It is a strong move from a defendant. It is very confident because this individual, Young Thug, has never shied away from the fame and notoriety and influence that he's had as one of Atlanta's most popular young musicians. And it is the defense's theory from the beginning that these individuals are only being targeted because of their outsized influence on the youth of Atlanta. Adrian Love, a very competent, very senior prosecutor from District Attorney Fonnie Willis's office. Adrian Love knew exactly what she was doing when she chose those words and that imagery in order to paint her narrative for a jury. And you would most often, this is how we train lawyers, that they would come back to that theme, come back to those images throughout the trial, keeping the story moving, keeping everybody together. And I would not doubt in any way, we're going to hear jungle. We're going to hear King of the Jungle. We're going to hear animalistic themes, domination, these very fundamental and universal touchstone themes, not just from Adrian Love and the rest of the DA's team, but obviously the defense has grabbed onto that as well. And the lawyers working for the defense are some of the most creative minds out there. I really look forward to seeing how they take into account this kind of animalistic and primitive imagery in a prosecution that has been beset by strong allegations of racial animus, other issues, how that's going to manifest in front of a jury. That is hot stuff. That is as complicated and as fun and as enjoyable as anything any lawyer gets to do.
And you're absolutely right, Josh. And I want to ask you, though, so you said it's a confident move. I mean, that's for sure. It's a bold move to show up to court wearing that wolf sweatshirt after opening statements that contain what we just heard. So, I mean, do you think it's not a good move? Do you think that that's something that could really hurt Jeffrey Williams?
Oh, I don't think that it's a hurt-help kind of situation. I think it impacts the way the story is told and the emotional connections being made. I believe this sweatshirt, in fact, I know this sweatshirt has made an appearance before. These individuals have limited access to clothing, even though they are allowed to wear street clothes instead of their jail uniforms. It's very important to do that in order to prevent the jury from being prejudiced by the existence of jail uniforms. So we're going to see this sweater again. I believe it was specifically chosen. I believe the imagery is extraordinarily strong, and oftentimes in urban music, dating way back into the 60s, 70s, 80s, the powerful imagery of urban music has been the driving force tying people together. And this image of a dominant animal, a lion, a wolf, ahead of the pack, that's something that's going to engender a lot of positive views from some people, just as much as Miss Love may be able to specifically mention it and advocate against it. Because you're right, it could be a nail sticking up and she's going to be the hammer. Oh, you want to meet the lion who's in charge of the big bad street gang? We identified who the leader of the pack is, and that's why we're prosecuting him.